it took me some time to realize that I had been spending a lot of time where I thought I was running towards my dreams. I was really running from myself and where I came from.
Welcome to Talking About Kids. I am your host, R. Bradley Snyder, researcher, activist, and author of The 5 Simple Truths of Raising Kids. What happens when a public health leader writes a memoir? Well, in Harper Bailey's case, the resulting work is as instructional as it is engaging. As you will hear in our discussion, this was intentional. Harper wanted It Was Her, a memoir, her debut book, to inspire readers to do the, quote, inner work so children don't inherit unhealed wounds, end quote. As you will also hear, that inner work is demanding and perpetual. And it might even take on different forms depending on where an individual is in their journey. Talking About Kids is sponsored in part by the Arizona Department of Health Services Must Stop Bullying campaign through its Title V Maternal and Child Health Program. For more information, go to muststopbullying.org. If the information in this episode inspired you to do the inner work so that you don't pass on unhealed wounds to children, well, it just might inspire someone else as well. So please like it and share it with your friends and colleagues. And now, the interview.
For me, my motivation is to, and I say this all the time in terms of like my affirmation about the book, is that It Was Her is a global success that will generate individual and collective healing. And so that is my motivation, and to be able to get this story into as many hands as I can. So here we are.
And I realize, of course, that's kind of a strange question because a memoir often explains, as yours does, why you are writing it. But,
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, because you talk in your materials about the book a lot about understanding trauma.
Yes.
And, after reading your memoir, It Was Her, a memoir
Mm-hmm.
by Harper Bailey, there are many different kinds of trauma that get explored in it. What did you know about trauma before writing the memoir? And
Yeah.
then kind of what did you learn about it during the process of writing it?
Yeah. So before writing the book, through therapy, I had come to know and understand that I had experienced multiple occurrences with trauma, complex trauma. After kind of unpacking some things in therapy, a lot of things I had buried, felt like I had dealt with it and just kept moving because that's just what you do when things happen. And what I had learned in my family and had been conditioned to do, think bad things happen, you figure it out, you work through it somehow, and you keep moving forward. So I did know that I had some things that were buried, but I was like, okay, that's okay. I'm all right with that. I also knew writing the memoir that I was still processing a lot of things in active time, and believed that the memoir would be, after kind of talking with my therapist a little bit and saying, okay, I do think now would be a good time to just work through some of these things and continuing some of the work outside of the office with her, and really going back and thinking about kind of how I got here. So I knew coming in that there were some things that I had already unearthed through therapy that still needed some more working through, and that this would be a way to help me continue that process. And I would also say I knew coming in that processing trauma takes time.
Mm.
For me, it took a lot of tears,
Hmm.
tools, grace. Like I had to give myself a lot of grace and time, to even just acknowledge that those things even happened, and that I was hurt by them and that it had an impact on me and how I was showing up today. So I knew that going into this process.
Yeah, your therapist, I hope I'm saying her name right, Lucia in the book,
Lucia,
Lucia.
yeah.
Like she's a constant. The book starts with her,
Mm-hmm.
and you
Mm-hmm.
return to her towards the end of the memoir as well.
Yeah.
There's a couple other constants in the book, and I want to get to those in a moment. But I always struggle with interviews like this, to be honest, Harper, because I don't want to give too much of the book away. Part of the joy of something like, It Was Her is getting to experience these things yourself as the reader. So I'm going to be
Yeah.
careful about that.
Okay.
But I do think that there's some things I want people to know. Um, when my takeaway from the book, the overarching theme, and the reason why I think it has the potential that you mentioned to benefit people is that your your trauma,
Mm-hmm.
in some cases, in some cases, patterns that you were
Mm-hmm.
raised with or had come to find comforting, they
Mm-hmm.
seem to undermine you at every stage, right when you were about to crest in a new accomplishment or like this new era of success. They
Mm-hmm.
kept coming back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
this notion that, and again, what I'd like the listeners to realize is that through your story, you did bounce back, despite the
Mm-hmm.
fact that it seemed like there were multiple times when you had the rug pulled out from you. Am I
Mm-hmm.
fair in my
Yeah.
interpretation of this?
Absolutely. And I appreciate the way that you even characterize kind of your experience in reading the story. There were a lot of patterns. There were things that were working in the background in
Yeah.
terms of like my mindset and my beliefs about who I was and how I was showing up in the world that would be motivations for going
Mm.
after things and dreams, but would also be the thing that would set me back. And it would put me in a place where I'm like, okay, things are going well, but not really. Something else is happening, but
Yeah.
I could never really put my finger on it. But I knew there was something else going on that needed to be explored. And I think the tricky part for me is because I grew up in a family where people were very motivated, self-motivated, and it was this thing of you pick yourself up, you do what you can, you always try your best. And on the outside, I felt like I was doing that.
Mm.
I was going to school in spite of becoming a teenage mom. I was very independent, getting these jobs, working my way up the corporate ladder, making more money. I was doing all the things that we've heard is the thing that you do. It's a part of the American dream. But every time I would get somewhere and just be like, okay, happiness will come now. It
Mm-hmm.
will come. It was there and then it would go away. And I'd be like, okay, now, okay, maybe I need something else shiny. I need to chase something else. And it took me some time to realize that I had been spending a lot of time where I thought I was running towards my dreams. I was
Mm.
really running from myself and where I came from.
Yeah, I don't know, like, if when you've talked to other people who have read the book, in the book, you're often surprised by these things that like seem to catch you off guard. And, at least as a reader, there were times when I was like, oh no. Like oh no. Like, and even like we would be coming up to a part of the book and I'm like, oh, what's gonna happen now? Because I know something's gonna happen now. Right.
Yes, yes.
So, I think was it part of your experience of learning that, like, to outsiders or to Lucia, even, that like these weren't surprising. It was surprising you.
It was. It was because I didn't know who I was.
Ah,
I was presenting as a person who thought she knew who she was. She
yeah.
thought she knew what she wanted. I was going after things that I thought were important to me. Um, and there was a mismatch. So, because of that disconnect, I couldn't see the patterns because I wasn't connected to who I really was. And so it distorted how I saw things. And I also now know that when you've experienced trauma and multiple occurrences of
Hmm.
trauma, it has an impact on you kind of mentally, physically. There's a physiological
Hmm.
impact in how you perceive safety, situations, and people and yourself, that you find yourself in this loop, this continuous loop, even when things present to be
Yeah.
different, right? I'm dating a different kind of guy. He's not like my dad, I don't think,
Right.
because I want the opposite of that. But yet, I get into this relationship and he reminds me of my dad, someone who I'm trying to forget and not be around. And so in the moment, it really did feel like, how did this happen again? I was making different choices,
Yeah.
and I really believed that that was what was happening.
And I just want to point out to listeners that longtime listeners will know that the great Ia Afo did a whole episode with us on intergenerational trauma,
Mm,
but we've had multiple episodes on childhood trauma as well. So you can go back and listen to Ia's episode, or you could listen to Tracy Fifi, or you could listen to Deborah Pepler. All of
mm,
those and more have covered childhood trauma. So
mm,
hopefully this is starting to and again, one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you is it creates a narrative around these constructs that we have talked about before on talking about kids. You know, another constant in your book, and obviously the other thing that really bookends this whole memoir is your relationship with your mother. And again, I
mm-hmm,
don't want to get into too many details because I want to leave that for the readers to discover. But it brings up a really interesting question, rather, one that you raise in your own materials about the book, which
mm-hmm,
is how do you like take from an important figure, and your mother was incredibly important to you.
mm-hmm,
How do you take from her example and use all of those the good things
mm-hmm,
and leave behind those things that
mm-hmm,
weren't so healthy?
mm-hmm.
Tell me about how you in your own life were able to discern,
Yeah.
oh, this is positive and this has made me more
Mm-hmm,
resilient,
mm-hmm,
or no, this undermined me a little bit
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
continues to be something that I have to work on.
Yeah. So I think and I'm glad you brought it up because my relationship with my mom was very complex, and knowing, I'd kind of kick off the book with her transitioning
Yeah.
and really believing that my life was over after that. I was my mother's only child. She and I were very connected. I also, because she was such a force in my life, a lot of things that had happened to me as a kid, I think I kind of buried some of those things
Mm.
that weren't so positive that I kind of bring up in the book. Things that might have felt, scary or at that time, that didn't show her in a positive light. I
Yeah.
kind of pushed that to the side and didn't realize, again, this operating system that was in the background working, and chose to focus on all the good things that I remembered about her and our relationship, because that's just kind of where my mind went when she moved on. And to your question of how do you discern, kind of, because it's not, I think part of that reckoning with your childhood and all your past experiences is really you got to cull through all of it, right? Really understand the major pieces and the pillars, right, that make you who you are, kind of from a foundational standpoint,
Yeah.
and being honest with yourself about how did that even feel in that moment? What did you
Mm.
think you knew? How did you feel? What was good about it? What wasn't so good about it? And being honest and saying that it doesn't take away from my mother's memory and who she is. I can still honor her by being honest with her and myself. Um, and it wasn't all bad,
Mm.
and I can acknowledge that, right? And make space for the good memories because they were also there too. And recognizing that there's room to be able to say the things that were harmful and hurtful are not the things that I want to carry forward when it
Okay.
comes to my parenting, when it comes to how I show up in the world. And forgiving my mother, even forgiving my dad, which was hard and is still a constant
Right.
kind of process for me, that helped me kind of say, okay, this was hurtful and harmful for these reasons, right? And I have perspective today. because I've had a lot of tools and time to really unpack those things and be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was the hard part for me. I think I would talk about things, and I was always, my therapist would say, when you talk about things that happened that were bad, you stick with the facts. You
Mm.
never tell me how you felt. You never tell me what scared you.
Mm.
I was like, I don't know, because the feelings piece, I was like, that left a long time ago. I don't have any real feelings around things that are bad. They're bad. They hurt me, and these are the things that happened. That's also something that happens with trauma, where
Yeah.
you kind of disconnect those emotions. And so it was like kind of bringing those things back together so that I could fully see situations for what they were, and being able to forgive not only the folks that were in those situations, but myself. And that was the struggle, I think, the hardest. I was able to forgive others quicker, especially my mom, because she had moved on, than I was for myself. I was holding out that
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness for myself, especially the little girl in me.
Well, I felt again reading the memoir. I felt that you had forgived her before
Mm-hmm.
she passed. I felt that
Mm-hmm.
there was a
Mm-hmm.
lot in your relationship that
Yeah.
had gotten positive,
Mm-hmm.
and that you had already started to make decisions about who she was and what she was to you, and the good things, and as you say, the things that you don't want to bring to your parenting. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really interesting because if I look at my peer group, I see there's kind of these three patterns. Either there are people that reject everything that their parents were, right? They go the
Mm-hmm.
opposite way.
Mm-hmm.
Then there are the people who are exactly like their parents and may
No.
not even know it.
Mm.
And then there's this third group, which is the people who are mad at what their parents did, but then still do it themselves, right? That's a frustrating one for people with a mental
Yes.
health background.
Yes.
But
Mm.
you seem to you seem to split it. You seem to
Yeah.
say, I'm very. Was it did the memoir help? Did the journaling help? Because by the way,
Mm-hmm.
this other tool that you have, and an important one for building resilience, it was, boy, I forget who gave you the journal
My
now.
aunt,
Your
she
aunt, that's
gave
right.
me a diary when I was 9.
Yeah,
And that unlocked something in me and it had a cute little lock and a teddy bear on it. I still have it to
yeah,
this day. And that was just my way of processing what was happening, just saying it and just having that conversation and that inner dialogue. So kind of moving what I was thinking and feeling
right.
out into the paper. I didn't know at the time she was unleashing
Mm,
something in me, and that would actually become a tool
yeah.
that I use even today. Um, but
Now,
yeah, you're
how
right.
often
Yeah.
did you go back before writing the memoir? How often
Mm-hmm.
did you go back and look at those journals?
Pretty, maybe once a year I would go back to some
Okay.
of them. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
because there's this thing of just being able to go back and reflect, and it's
Yeah.
like seeing myself in my own words, right? So I could say, oh, in my 20s I thought about this, I dated these type of people, I did these things, but then when I would go back and I would read my journals and be so cringy, thinking about like, oh my god, I went on that date and I said what, I did what,
Yeah.
and it was a great way. It was evidence, right? It was like a fossil. It was embedded, okay, of kind of where I was mentally. And so to be able to look back, it was a way to really see how far I had come or not.
Mm-hmm.
I also could start to notice patterns even when I would go back and look, but it wasn't until I wrote the memoir
Okay.
and actually started pulling out and saying, okay, let's just read it for the sake of saying kind of what are the through lines through here? What are some of the patterns that continue to repeat? I will also say, Lucy, it was very helpful when I told her I wanted to write a memoir, and I said I know that my healing process had so much to do with our relationship and what we did with therapy, and I said, would you be comfortable with sharing your case notes with me?
Mm.
And I put in a release of information. She released them. And so between my diary that I had from the time I was 9 to about 10, maybe no 12, 13, and my journals through my 20s, and then having case notes
Yeah.
from my therapy,
Oh wow.
it took me on an emotional, I would say a roller coaster, where I was like, okay, I can see myself in a way. that I never thought was possible. Because when you're in it, you're just in it. You have moments where you reflect, but to have it written was something.
Well, and I have to, like, again, my reading was that it helped you find compassion for
Mm-hmm.
yourself,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Being able to go back, and because we, again, we tend to be so dichotomous and look back on something as black and white,
Mm-hmm.
or good or bad, or, and
Mm-hmm.
you were able to see the real motivations behind some of the decisions you made, what you were thinking at the time, and of course you were a young person, and so I did like that. I thought, what a wonderful tool, what a wonderful gift to be able to have that way to process your feelings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Obviously, in your professional life, when you're not a memoirist, you have had a career in mental health services, and
Yes.
so I have to imagine that you were also, like, really aware that these tools were out there, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that was also interesting about your journey is your willingness to pivot and to
Mm-hmm.
try new ways,
Mm-hmm.
depending on kind of where you were at that moment. And
Mm-hmm.
you talk about it happens. It happens later in the book that your therapist starts to explain trauma to you,
Yes.
and it happens a little bit later than that, where you decide that, where you're taking your knowledge of how trauma is living in your body, and
Mm-hmm.
you do things like pursue Reiki, for
Yes.
example.
Yes.
So
Yes.
how
Mm-hmm.
you have a very analytic background. You
Mm-hmm.
you are in mental health services. You're writing these memoirs, but how did you stay so open to different ways to
Mm-hmm.
approach getting at healing?
Yeah. I think once I started seeing some of the benefits,
Mm,
right? And it wasn't that I necessarily saw them in myself first. It was people who were close to me would say, "Oh, you don't seem as mad about that
yeah,
particular situation. Oh, when you talk about your dad, you actually smile and think about
yeah,
some of the fun times you all had together." So it was like, "Oh, maybe this is working. Maybe it is." I mean, I would often question Lucia because I would say, I'd be so frustrated sometimes in sessions and being like, this, I know you said it would be hard,
yeah.
and you never said how hard it would be, but I really feel like I'm free falling out of a window. And she would say, this is part of it. This is part of it. And you just have to keep going, and you will fall and hit your bottom at some point, and then we get to rebuild. And so I was encouraged by that. I was also encouraged by, no matter how hard our sessions were, I always seemed to feel a little bit better some
Okay.
days later. It wasn't never the next day, it took time. And so I think just kind of that glimmer of hope kept me wanting to seek and see what else is out there. Okay, I like therapy. Okay, what are other kind of modalities that are out there
Right.
that really help people come back to themselves? That really help them see themselves and really remove the ego. What else is there? And we live in the information age, so it's easy to say you don't know something, but if you are seeking a particular thing and actually go in full pursuit of that, you will find that there's a whole world of other modalities and things that you can try. Try it on and see.
Yeah, but again, and not to push back on you
Yeah.
on this, but, like, your approach to trying other modalities wasn't, either or. You worked to integrate
Yes.
when you took on something else. So,
Yes.
at one point you were getting counseling from your pastor, Freddie,
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
staying with your therapist. You were doing
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
both, and
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, they were aware of each other as well.
They were. And that pastor actually was my husband's therapist that
Okay.
he started seeing. And then pastor said, okay, you got to bring your wife in so we can start seeing her and what was going on with her. And before he even came in, my husband first, we started marriage
Yeah.
counseling. So, and that was awful.
Yeah.
It was awful.
It was awful.
I thought that it was going to be this thing of, okay, we're bringing someone in. We know we've kind of reached the end of our rope in terms of our tools. We want to figure out how to stay together. We need help. And I was thinking this person was going to come in and tell my husband all the things and agree with me and tell him all the things he was doing wrong.
Right.
and actually get in and get at it. And instead, all we did was yell at each other. All we did was vomit over each other. It was and he didn't want to go to therapy.
No.
He was just like, I don't see the benefit. I don't know how it would work. You and I need to figure this out because I would also say too, therapy feels and felt foreign. So even though I did it professionally as an administrator, like ran clinics and did
Mm-hmm.
all of that, there was also this belief in what I had been conditioned that you don't go and talk to people about your problems. Like how can they help you? They don't know you.
Right.
You keep things in, you stay with people who know you, who can help you, who then later you learn they don't have tools either. So y'all just spinning together.
Right.
And so I was just like, I know these services are important. So as administrator, I was like, oh, I'm helping people who really need it. I'm okay because I'm still functioning. So I didn't even see it was something that I was like, I even need it until I realized we needed it. Started marriage counseling. That was awful.
Yeah.
But one thing he did do that opened a window, he said, I really think you all should pursue individual counseling.
Yep.
Because maybe he realized that what we were really arguing about with each other had so much more to do with what we had brought into our relationship, and it was compounding. And so quit that, started individual counseling. Then that's kind of opened the door to other things. And I agree with you. It wasn't like I necessarily put things down. I kept going and
Mm-hmm.
seeing where things would lead me and being open to it. Um, so yes, Pastor Freddie knew about my therapist, and we would unpack sessions together. And that integrative piece, I think, is also just very, very. And I continued to journal
Mm-hmm.
because that made me feel good. I don't know how much it was fixing, but there was something about it that was therapeutic. And so I was kind of building a toolkit, which Lucia kind of worked with me to say, we need to figure out at various points within our lives what makes us feel good and to do those things and to know that those things can change because we change. And so I had that baseline and knowing that that was part of the healing process.
You know, you mentioned the couples therapy, and I wrote down a quote from Cliff when he was in the therapy because when he said this, I'm like, oh, this is not going to go in a good direction. He said in therapy once, he said, she's the one with all of the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I have never experienced any trauma like that in my life. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have any trauma.
Yes. Yes.
And, you know, we know enough about Cliff in your memoir to know absolutely at the at the very least, you know,
Right.
he's experienced the trauma of being a black man in the United States, if
Right.
nothing else.
Right. Right. Mm-hmm.
And you know, just that attitude at that moment
Mm-hmm.
also lacked a little bit of empathy, but it also showed some of those barriers that we all have to
Yes.
seeking this kind of help. No, sometimes I think people in the mental health services field are the worst at accessing help.
Mm-hmm.
So you know that was again. I don't want I don't want to give too much away about what happens after that.
Yeah.
But but that was a moment where I thought things were going to go. They did go in different directions afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
but also in some very good directions. That's not a spoiler. I'm just
Right.
putting
It's
that out
not.
there.
It's not. But you could see what we were up against.
Yes, you could absolutely
Right.
see.
Yeah. And that resistance. He
Yeah,
brought that in. He says, I'm only here because she wanted me to come.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So when I would leave, aching and pain and all that, and he's like, "That's what you wanted this. You brought this on." And he could clearly see, and I do know now that when we are in relationship with people, our partners, our friends, they can see things within us that we can't see. He didn't necessarily have the tools to be able to say the things in a way that wasn't hurtful or harmful. So it was always daggers to me, and
Yeah.
I was already hurting very deeply. I didn't even realize it. And he would always find kind of the softest parts of me and like stab me there. And then to be stabbed by somebody who could say out loud, "Nothing's wrong with me. Everything is wrong with you." It was just like, oh my God, how did that happen? I found somebody who actually was interested in me, who actually loved me, who's presented to be different than my dad, but yet also let me down.
Well, and that I don't even know if I want to segue here, but to this, um, but you know, men. Like this was another theme in memoirs. Men had let you down. This
Yeah.
was an ongoing theme.
Hmm.
And again, without giving anything away, I think that this is will actually motivate people to want to read this more. You are now the parents of three
Three.
males, one a young
Three.
man in his own
Yes.
right,
Yes.
two shortly behind in their
Mm-hmm.
man journey. What did you learn about men that changed how you felt about them by being a
Mm-hmm.
parent?
Yeah. You know, I I would say to my therapist oftentimes, because she kept saying, "You are scared of men," and I was like, "No, I
Mm.
hate them. I hate them. That's not it. I only my three kids. I love them. All of the rest of them, I hate them, including my husband. I hate them. They have done nothing but hurt me and let me
Yeah.
down. But yet here I am wanting to have a daughter, like trying to break things up, and I have three boys who become men. I knew that there was something in that lesson, right? To be in charge of like actually shepherding these young boys into manhood that I was tasked with. Um, and what I learned is that so much of what I feared about men and hated, it came from a place from when I was younger and the things
Mm.
that I saw and that I had experienced. They were real feelings,
Mm-hmm.
they were real experiences, but they were really shaping and coloring how I saw men day to day. Even when I didn't realize that that was the case. And so I held all this softness from my boys because these were the kids that I birthed. And I was like, they're going to be different. I'm going to raise them to know how to see women. I'm
Mm.
going to raise them to be kind, to know not to ever put their hands on a woman, to be able to be self sufficient. Like all of the things that I felt like I hadn't experienced or saw and what I believed manhood to be was very narrow because
Mm.
it was me. I hadn't thought about how to include Cliff into that, even though he was the father of my last two children. Um, and it took time to really figure out how to be in a partnership with someone. I had never seen that. My parents, they were
Yeah.
together, but they were not partners. So I didn't know what that looked like, and we had to build it together. And so I have so much compassion for young men now,
Mm.
all right? My young boys and seeing them as young men and trying to help them navigate in this world, right? And give them tools so they could also know that they're whole and that they can walk around in the world that may not always see them
Yeah.
as being safe or whole. And that is just we're learning together. We're learning how to navigate together. And I think that that's the biggest thing that I want your listeners to walk away with parenting, that I believe we all get two childhoods in this
Mm.
lifetime, right? The first one is the one that you really don't have much control over, right? Someone else is holding the pen, someone else is writing the narrative, and you get to be a character depending on your parents and the way that you show up. But that second childhood, you get to choose what that looks like. You get to go back and you look at that first childhood and say, okay, what are the things that were really yummy and good that I want to pull through? What are the things that weren't? We need to process those things. We can't bury it because that doesn't work. I
Mm.
tried it. Okay. I wrote a whole book about it. That doesn't work. You still got to process them. But then those become lessons that you then get to pull into your second childhood so that then you get to be kind of an active and safe and healthy, right, participant for your children's first childhood, right? Cliff and I often we joke and we say sometimes when we're like thinking about our rules and things that we want to do, we'd be like, "Is this the thing we want them to be on someone's couch about in 20 years? Is this the thing they're going to be on someone's couch
Right.
later? But is this the thing that we want it to be?" And to even have that conversation with each other and just that intentionality and how we want to show up with our kids, I think has helped us be better parents. And engaging our kids and being honest with them and say, "Hey, we are learning just like you. We can't do that blanket parenting that our parents did, where every kid got the same parent, even though you were a different kid. We know that doesn't work." And so just being able to see my kids individually has helped as well and letting them be on this journey with us.
Well,
So,
and I think that just helping them understand their emotions
yes.
has been a real gift. This was, when your depictions of different parts of your relationship, or different relationships you had with different men, or even the depiction of your relationship between you and your mother, or your mother and your biological father,
Hmm.
it reads like people that didn't know what to do until the emotions got so big. And then
Yeah.
it was, either pleading or it was
Hmm.
violence or
Hmm.
sometimes both at the same time. And
Hmm.
so, and you had this wonderful passage towards the end of your book. You said, "To this day, I'm still working hard to bring feelings into my world. It can see how critical it was to highlight the path of exploring my choices or lack
Hmm.
thereof when these hurtful occurrences entered my life."
Yes.
So, I mean, to me, that again, one of the wonderful parts about this book, in addition to your willingness to always try again, to bring new treatment modalities into your path, was this constant re-examining of your feelings and giving them
Yeah.
legitimacy. And I think that's something that
Mm.
everyone can learn from.
Yes. 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 And my parents didn't have the tools.
No,
They both grew up in a time where it was like children are meant to be seen and not heard. They would get slapped, and it's like, why are you crying? Don't cry.
yeah,
Put it in. Why are you mad? You have nothing to be mad about. And a lot of that came to me. And so I had an early departure with
mm,
feelings. It was like, stuff it down, stuff it down. It don't matter. It doesn't matter. And I think I also, times when I felt like I could be myself and show up and have feelings be there, they kind of were in the driver's seat. And I found myself like, wait a minute, now things were out of control. See, this is why
yeah.
I don't let feelings come to the party. Look what they do. They mess with my judgment. They don't, logic and feelings don't go together. They just don't know how to play together. And really, it was that I never, the logic piece, I learned that very early, and that was a strength. It was the feelings piece that was like, there was a lot of atrophy there. And I needed to really learn what my feelings were here to teach me. And once I was able to learn and process and let them wash over me, then I was able to actually marry the two. And that's what we do with our children. And so our youngest son, he is the most emotive of our
Mm,
children. And he's like, I just need a moment. And he will remove himself. And we go and we check in on him, and we have this code in our room, in our place, where it's like, okay, you can separate and it's not a problem. We will come and check on you. When I open the door, you let me know. You give me a thumbs up to let me know you're good and you're still working, or you let me know you want me to come in so we
yeah.
can talk together. So we have a plan for how we can process together, and it works.
Well, Harper, I want to thank you so much for writing It Was Her, a memoir. And I also want to thank you for being a guest on Talking About Kids.
Thank you for having me. This has been so great. I am over the moon about this book, and I'm excited to be able to have your listeners learn a little bit more about it and continue supporting your wonderful show.
That was Harper Bailey. More information about Harper and her book, It Was Her, a Memoir, is at talkingaboutkids.com. And when you do visit talkingaboutkids.com, leave me a note. Let me know what you think. I would love to hear from you. The Talking About Kids theme song is by the Senators. For more of their music, go to thesenatorsmusic.com. And remember, kids are young goats and young humans, and the difference is that young goats are easier to manage.